Hey guys, now I know a lot of people were upset in my opinion of The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Back! Away with you, you nasty rotten thing!
But today we're here to talk about a way better Dane DeHaan movie and performance, so don't be too mad at me this time.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man!
Welcome back to the Retro Redux, and today we're talking about Chronicle. Now, I was a wee lad when this movie came out. I was about 12 going on 13, actually literally going on 13 because I saw this on my birthday. I don't think I have any photos or anything of that day, but it was pretty cool because it was like the first theater I remember going to where like you could order food and they like bring it to you during the movie. Problem was this movie is like really short, at least the theatrical cut. I mean, even the extended cut turns out is like only like 1 hour and 20 minutes. But for its time, this movie was actually considered a highbrow concept for a superhero movie. To be honest with you, this also benefited from like a notable marketing campaign. Like the trailer was super notable and there were so many commercials all over the place promoting this movie. How could you not be excited for a superhero movie about 3 high school kids getting superpowers and just having fun with it? Oh man, we weren't prepared for how actually fucked up this movie was. Now, it's not the most disturbing, depressing movie you could watch, but it's absolutely one of the better modern science fiction tragedy films. The movie itself is about 3 high school guys who develop a friendship group while bonding over their newfound telekinetic abilities. The most notable thing about this movie, even if you didn't see it, was the aspect of the found footage filming technique that they use. In the world of found footage movies, especially at this time, there were just so many. It was like an oversaturated market, but this was more aligned in tone, aesthetic, and effort with like a Cloverfield more so than Paranormal Activity. Any film that uses found footage is based upon like the novelty of it and the aspect of like, oh, is this real or not? And at the time, this film is also incredibly guilty of it. If you're telling me something is found footage and the quality and cinematography, color grading, all of that is just amazing, I just really don't take that premise seriously. Like, I'm sorry. Also, like the first camera that the main character is using is comically large. Like it's clearly like a film camera, and just walking around with that like at school and in places in public conceptually just doesn't make sense. And as the movie progresses, I think what's really cool is how they film it from every camera's perspective. So other characters, when they use their cameras, the perspective will switch to it. There are also things like security cameras and helicopter cameras, as well as cell phones near the end. And sometimes if there's a camera being used in the scene where there's another camera, you'll see it and it's in the correct orientation, which I think is pretty cool. All in all, the found footage stuff, especially when you reach the end of the movie, kind of just falls apart. There's a whole bunch of shots where the found footage aspect just really doesn't make sense and it just turns into a movie. There were so many opportunities to use like maybe some police officer chest cams or some dashboard cameras could have been used, or even some outdoor security cameras at the places that they were at, but no, I didn't really understand it. But it's not bad enough to take you out of the movie. It's just inconsistent. Now, like I said, the premise of the movie is about these characters getting telekinesis, so let's talk about the powers. Now, when they get telekinesis, it's really fun. Honestly, the idea of getting telekinesis, especially with a newly forged group of friends, it's such an enchanting concept, and it's the absolute strength of the movie. The best scenes in this movie are just of the trio hanging out and practicing their powers in funny and cool ways. Seeing the growth of their abilities, going from like moving Legos to sliding full-size cars, or even flying, or even something as sadistic as pulling out someone's teeth or just straight up blunt force, is all really cool. And I think the part where they get their powers is actually super creepy but effective. It's like some weird organic mineral that's emitting a noise that we, the audience, can't hear because of the camera and the microphone quality, but it's almost like a creepy siren call to the main characters. I think this origin aspect of the movie is actually handled in an interesting way. It's the only real indication of what gives the group their powers, and it's one of the only times in the film where it has like Lovecraftian elements to it. The only time I got as uncomfortable as this scene was during the credits, when you hear the same sound effects and just a creepy score that's like super understated. But seriously, you really don't know where the organic mineral came from. You don't know if it's alien or if it's naturally occurring on the earth or if it's man-made, but all of that mystery and intrigue surrounding it is really cool because the characters don't really care. Now, that's not to say that they don't make an effort. They do, but due to the circumstances surrounding it, they just kind of move on from it. And considering that they're high school students, their frontal lobe hasn't fully developed yet, they're not actually thinking of the consequences of it. I think that's also a strength of this movie. These are normal people. They're not members of S.H.I.E.L.D. or super geniuses like Batman that could look into it, and to be honest, they wouldn't even really want to look into it. I also liked the added element of not only the telekinesis being their powers, but some sort of telepathy or super empathy bridging the three main characters together with their names, and nosebleeds occurring randomly, but it turns out like all of those things happen when there's like super important events or dire circumstances surrounding them, which I thought was pretty cool, but it's never really explained either. The special effects surrounding their abilities and what they do with them is fine considering the budget. Stuff like the baseball doesn't really look that good, but simpler things like chips, Legos, or even the car that Michael B. Jordan's character moves is, it works. It's super effective. I think the scenes where Michael B. Jordan and Dane DeHaan are on the roof talking to each other looks decent. I appreciate the effort when it came to the lighting and, the depth of field effects and stuff, but it's fine. It's effective. And same thing with the flying football sequence when they're going through the air wearing their parkas because it's super cold, which was also a nice little detail that I appreciated. Flying would be super cold, and them all wearing coats and stuff was a nifty little detail. But yeah, that scene doesn't look the best, but like I said, all in all, it's still pretty cool. If there is one major criticism I could give for the special effects and the powers and stuff like that, I would say that the ending car lift feels like a Universal 4D ride. Like, it felt like I was on the Spider-Man ride again, I'm not gonna lie to you, but not as effective as the Spider-Man ride. But all in all, them flying around and using their abilities or making things fly or just go up in the air is just tons of fun. The movie itself also takes like a tonal shift when one of the dudes uses their powers to crash like a road rage driver who's been fronting on them on the road. And I like the scene because it also does a really good job just displaying the three main characters' moral placement. Michael B. Jordan's character is like honestly shocked and frustrated and outraged. Matt's character is more frustrated with Andrew, all things considered, and Andrew is kind of indifferent and defensive to the whole thing. Speaking of this scene, since we're already going to go there, let's just talk about the guys. Let's talk about the main characters. These guys are cool, they feel like real friends, and it sucks when everything goes down like a good tragedy should. It's just unfortunate when you see, and then the descent into the overall low that this movie hits tonally. The guys themselves are like siblings. Steve, played by Michael B. Jordan, is like the older brother, cool with his shit together. Andrew, played by Dane DeHaan, is like the emotional baby brother, and Matt is more so like the neglected middle child. It seems like the more trauma the character has, the stronger their telekinesis abilities, hence Matt being the weakest, since he doesn't really seem to have gone through or currently going through much trauma, but it is hinted that he is going through something. Matt, like I said, I called him the neglected middle child, not just because of his placement in the story, but overall his development and everything surrounding him feels that way. He doesn't get that much development other than, the empathy for his cousin as the film progresses, but outside of that, he has his own side story with a love interest character, and she's kind of dumb, especially during that talent show scene with all her ad-libs.
Are they gonna walk on that?
What do you think?
But I do have to say, I did like the aspect of his powers not manifesting as strong as Steve's or Andrew. If you attribute their abilities and the strength to their trauma, Matt is moving throughout the entire film in a more positive direction. He has a love interest character that turns out to be his ex-girlfriend, and he's actually trying to patch up his relationship. So, he has something to do. It's just not really compelling, in my opinion. Then we get to Steve, portrayed by Michael B. Jordan. Listen, man, it's young Killmonger Creed. This was the first movie I remember seeing him in. Obviously, he had some others, but this was like his true break into the mainstream, in my opinion, or at least from my perspective. He brings a nice feeling of levity to what, up until his introduction, felt like a straight up downer movie. His relationship with Andrew is by far the strongest relationship in the movie, as they bond over their parental issues, obviously on different levels and different situations, but still, issues with their parents is what brings them together. His scene that I mentioned earlier is him being the nicest person to Andrew at that point into the movie, and then we get to Andrew.
Lion does not feel guilty when it kills a gazelle, right? You do not feel guilty when you squash a fly. And I think that means something. I just think that really means something.
Andrew is the main protagonist slash also bad guy of the movie, I guess you could say. He comes from a broken home with an abusive dad and a terminally ill mom, and he also, due to these, unfortunate circumstances, kind of invites bullying by his odd, what would be considered by others infuriating behavior. Nothing that frustrates you as a viewer, but just more so you have the understanding of who Andrew is, what he's going through, and how he kind of invites the bullying. Not to say that people invite bullying, but I mean, when you walk around filming people, especially the way that Andrew does at times in this movie, it's clear that he isn't this innocent dude that's just getting bullied. He's kind of fucked up and doesn't really understand boundaries to a certain extent. His powers are the strongest, and since majority of the film is from his perspective, there's plenty of just silent moments of Andrew by himself, either manipulating stuff or just moving the camera around, and it's clear that there's an indication very early on, and like I said, as the movie progresses, of some sort of narcissism or egotistical trip that he begins to go on because of how powerful he is. Like this part where he manipulates the spider is just fucked up, but it's something that almost eventually leads to his apex predator speech, which is one of the best parts of the movie, honestly. Even though it's kind of cringe, I still really like that he's filming himself in these vlogs and these things that he's not even uploading to the internet. It's just for the camera. After he maybe or not accidentally or on purpose kills, his heel turn and descent into madness is super unfortunate considering how much of a high he was on literally right before it. I also never really put much thought into him putting on his dad's old firefighter outfit to commit his first real villainous act, but it's a nifty little visual allegory between the transfer of abusive and self-destructive tendencies between generations. I also love how quickly he fails, because it's like, yeah dude, you have powers, but he really isn't the brightest. Also, I just gotta say, it's super underappreciated supervillain costumes there. Like the firefighter costume is already badass, but then the hospital gown with the bandages and shit is also really cool. I know that this film has plenty of Akira inspirations, and I won't go too deep into those comparisons here. I might make like a separate video about it, especially considering I want to do an Akira Retro Redux, but outside of the Retro Redux series, I might do just like a Chronicle Akira like comparison video one day. Overall, the ending might be the weakest aspect of the film. I won't go too deep into the fight and how it turns out, but I just kind of wish there was something else to it. I really don't know what, considering how the film kind of leads you to this point, but it does feel a bit underwhelming. I do think the movie itself also undersells its premise by somehow feeling like it overstayed its welcome, even with this super short runtime. I guess the issue for me was that if there was one thing this film could have utilized to maybe make the pacing feel better, is just more scenes with a slower burn into Andrew's villainy. But all in all, this film is a great concept that was honestly ahead of its time. especially when you look at the landscape now, and plenty of my favorite superhero properties right now are the ones that are more so outside of the DC Marvel properties. Stuff like The Boys and Invincible, a couple other titles that I'll throw in there, are all a part of the Chronicle baby syndrome, if that makes sense, where it's, hey, we don't have the access legally to these superheroes, so instead of that, let's make our own and do something different with them, tell a different story. And I really appreciated that. I don't love this movie as much as I did when I was younger, but it was still really cool to watch this as an adult, and like I say, notice the little things that I didn't really pay attention to before, like the firefighter outfit, and seeing the extended edition as well, so I got to see like the conversations between Steve and Andrew also helps this movie a lot in terms of my personal perspective. However, my overall opinion on this film kind of remains the same. It's a really good watch, really interesting, but not the greatest movie of all time by any means, and it's just a really good one. And the performances from Dane DeHaan and Michael B. Jordan, especially if you watch the extended editions, are really appreciated, and you understand why those two are in the positions in Hollywood that they are now. All in all, like I said, I really like this film. But what did y'all think? Let me know in the comments. Did you love Chronicle? Did you see it when it came out? Did you see it later on? And how did you feel about its potential influence on Hollywood and other superhero films? Do you think that even exists, or do you think this film has been forgotten about? And do you want a sequel to this movie? Maybe something like Cloverfield, where the films aren't really connected, like an anthology sense, because I think this story between these three characters and this town and those abilities is kind of done. But at the same time, I'm all super cool with never knowing what that organic mineral was. I just think that makes it way creepier. But I will see y'all in the next Retro Redux. Bye bye.